Welcome back to another episode of the Legacy Blueprint Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Evangelisti. I have a great guest on today who has built himself multiple portfolios of mobile home parks and has raised funds to do so. Kevin Bupp has a background in mobile home park development, has done multiple single families, has a real estate investing background, and I'm sure a wealth of knowledge to share with our guest today. So I'm very excited to welcome my guest today, Kevin Bupp. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Joe. Looking forward to being here.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. Well, thank you for hanging out with us today, Kevin. I mean, tell us a little bit about, maybe what you got going on today.
Yeah. So I've been investing now for like 19 years, going on 20 years. So pretty much my entire adult life. Got started in single family, built up quite a large portfolio of single family properties in my 20s, moved into apartment complexes, built up quite a nice portfolio. 2008 came and went, completely wiped us out. Took a couple of years to get our footing back again. And back in 2012 was kind of when that footing came back to place. And the entry point that we went in at was mobile home parks. It was a niche that we had never entered into before, didn't have any experience with, and bought a park back in 2012. Went really well. Bought a second one, bought a third one, bought a fourth. And the story goes on. And so for the past 7 years, we have become somewhat experts in the mobile home park space. We own parks today, and it's either 12 or 13 different states. I'd have to count them, but so we've got thousands of units that we have underneath ownership. And that's our niche. So we typically put together fund-like structures where we raise capital from high net worth individuals, accredited investors, and we partner our own parks together. Again, we've got them in a number of different states, and that is our day-to-day. We've got an entire infrastructure built around buying and owning mobile home parks.
I love that, man. One of the things that hits me like right off the bat is just from an infrastructure standpoint, how you manage things in, 12 or 13 different states. Like, what does that look like? I mean, do you have to buy something big enough to put a manager in place in each space? Or, maybe is there something, unique about how you guys operate that way?
Yeah, no, you absolutely do. I mean, the size is very important. There's got to be enough revenue from that individual property to justify being able to pay someone that can be your eyes and ears there on site. And the more revenue you have from a community, the better quality, or better talent manager you can get there in place. And so each one of our respective communities has either an on-site individual or a team. Sometimes even more than 2 people, 3 people, depending on the size, that run the day-to-day operations. So someone that's there collecting rents, scanning rents into our bank account, delivering late notices, working with vendors whenever there's an infrastructure problem in the community, showing available homes that we might have for sale, what have you. So they're the day-to-days, the eyes and the ears, boots on the ground of that community. If you've got a really small community that, let's say it's, 20 lots or something like that. There's a good chance if it's in a normal part of the country. When I say a normal part of the country, there's some places like where you live where lot rents are really high, where you might be able to still justify finding a manager because maybe the lot rents are $600 a month. But the average lot rent across the country is somewhere in like the $300 range. So if you've got a small park, doesn't generate a lot of annual income, you might have a very challenging time finding anybody to handle that day to day for what you were able to afford to pay them. So not that you can't, but you get what you pay for, right? As far as talent's concerned, most of the time, if you're willing to only pay someone $4 an hour, then you're probably not going to get the best quality person to run your park for you.
Exactly. So, no, I mean, it's obvious. I mean, you're going to get what you pay for, and you got to get, the numbers have to make sense. I mean, the interesting thing, I think to me is that you got so many people and you made this transition, and, I'm in this real estate space, talking to so many different people who are constantly looking for a way to level up, especially in that single family space. And you started in the single family space. Why mobile home parks as opposed to, other types of real estate, right? You got guys and girls that are transitioning. They're looking to go to that next level, and they see people that are constantly fighting for the apartment complex or the retail space or the office or self-storage or whatever that thing may be. What drew you to mobile home parks specifically?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think first and foremost, I learned a lot of lessons, leading up to the crash of 2008. I had originally been trained buying single family rental properties. So we, built up quite a large portfolio of over 120 single family homes before that crash happened. And it was very time intensive. Number one, just to buy that many properties that were, buy and holds. And then the management and the maintenance part of running those when they were spread out amongst 3 or 4 different counties was an absolute nightmare. And so it was very inefficient. And that kind of led me to buying apartments back then, because there was a more concentrated number of units underneath one roof, and it just made an easier maintenance and just overall management property versus a bunch of single family properties. And so in any event, what drew us to mobile home parks, it was everything in my life has kind of happened by accident, or maybe it's the right place, right time. I'm not sure. Maybe just being aware of the moment that I'm in. I'm not sure what it is, because I'd never considered mobile home parks. However, as I was trying to figure out how to rebuild myself back in 2011, again, having 3 years off of investing in real estate, started a few other businesses, knew I wanted to get back into real estate, but knew I didn't want to do single family homes based on the inefficiencies that I saw, and I wanted to do bigger things. I really loved the apartments that I was in, and I thought I was going to get into that space. However, I had lunch one day with a mutual friend, a guy that I had never known before. A mutual friend of ours introduced us. His name was Randy. Randy owned mobile home parks here in Florida. He owned 3 of them. Some very nice parks, but I wasn't going to lunch with Randy to learn about parks, more so just to meet someone new, someone that was successful, interesting, what have you. However, that lunch meeting turned into like a 2-hour lunch. And during that time, we mostly talked about what it was that Randy did, which was mobile home parks, and why he did it, why he loved the asset class. And he bragged on about it for nearly 2 hours. And some of the big things that just really stuck with me during that time together was, and he was making comparisons to like apartments. Like that was the best apples to apples comparison he could give me as far as why mobile home parks and not apartments. A couple of the big things are, number one, the turnover rate's a lot lower, and you've got most of the folks in these mobile home parks own their own home. It's very expensive to move these homes. Most of the folks that live in them, it's just like in a single family, residential neighborhood. They live there for a number of years. They're not like moving from home to home every year like a renter might. And so, and if they do want to leave, it's very expensive for them to do so. On average, $5,000 for single wide, and sometimes up to double that for a double wide or a bigger home. And so what happens most of the time when someone needs to leave the mobile home park, let's say they get a job transfer, or maybe they're just leaving the area for whatever reason, they put their home up for sale. They continue paying lot rent. That home sells, new buyer comes in, moves in, and then takes over the lot rent responsibility. So there's never a hiccup like you might have in an apartment where you've got someone that moves out. Now you've got 2 months of no revenue, plus you've got make-ready costs to get that unit back in condition to move into, make it habitable again. And so we don't have that much of that in our space. Another big thing that he kind of pitched me on was, since you have mostly homeowners, you've got a lot less management intensity. The day-to-day of running a 100-space mobile home park to a 100-unit apartment complex is like night and day. It's a part-time job on the 100-unit mobile home park, whereas it's probably like 2 full-time jobs on the 100-unit apartment complex. So that was a big one. Another one that he kind of sold me on was the massive barrier to entry that existed in the space. Municipalities, for whatever reason, don't like mobile home parks. They just don't like them. They've got a bad image associated with them. They've got the negative stereotype. Some of them deserve it. A lot of them don't. But however, it pretty much sticks across the country. And so the chances of someone going into any city or town throughout the country and actually getting approval to build a new mobile home park is it's maybe like 0.5% chance of that really happening. And so what that means is that whatever park we own, and it's in a good school district, we don't have to worry about a competitor coming down the road and purchasing a vacant piece of land to develop a new mobile home park. And so the installation factor of competition is there, and it's real, and it's nice. We don't have to worry about the oversupply that can happen in the other types of asset classes. Self-storage is a big risky endeavor as far as oversupply happening, or new units being built, or too many new units coming on to where the market can't absorb it. Apartments, it happens, right? We don't have to worry about that in our space. And so those are some of the big ones. Others would be, higher returns typically when compared to apartments. The typical owner demographic, and that's slowly changing, of mobile home parks is like an older mom and pop. A lot of these owners they own just one community. They're aging out of them. It means that they're at the point in their lives where they've owned it for 35, 40 years, and they either want to sell because they're tired, or they need to sell maybe due to health issues, or just it's that time of their life, right? And so that represents an opportunity as well for us to go in and actually treat it a little bit more like a business than maybe what they have over the past 15, 20, 30, 40 years of their ownership. So in a nutshell, those are some of the bigger ones that attracted us to that niche, and they've kind of played out over the 7 years that we've been here. So we've been real excited with our results, and absolutely love the space.
Well, man, you sold me. I mean, I'm sitting here with my some single families thinking like check, 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 ROI, ease of management. I don't have to like this is like that. I mean, that sounds amazing. I mean, you don't think about a lot of these things like the low turnover, right? Somebody's parked somewhere, like they're not moving that thing. They own that. They own that home. Like what's the chances of them picking it up and moving it to a different park? That can't happen too often. What is the real management that happens, right? Is move-ins and move-outs and connections and so forth, right? But how often does that really happen? You're not managing or maintaining the actual unit, right? These are owners, so they're taking care.
That's right. So plumbing issues, roofing issues, air conditioning goes out, any of that, they're calling their own vendor. They're calling their own plumber, their own electrician. They're not calling you. That's not your responsibility. Our responsibility as far as the park's concerned is the infrastructure. So the roads and then the water and the sewer lines, leading up to their home. But everything after that point on their lot into their home is their responsibility, which it's a complete game changer. I mean, it's a difference of getting calls nonstop every day for maintenance issues to really not getting any at all. And so I don't want to paint a picture that these things are practically no involvement to manage, because in a perfect world, Joe, we wouldn't own any of the mobile homes inside the community, right? Most of these parks were built with the intention of every single resident being a homeowner. However, over time, things happen. People pass away, their heirs don't want the unit. And so what happens, just like if someone were to leave like a vehicle parked on your front yard and they just abandoned it, after some point in time, you actually have a legal right to obtain the title and the ownership to that car. Same thing goes with these mobile homes. And so just by default, what happens sometimes is the park owners end up owning one or some or a lot of these mobile homes if they don't kind of play their cards right. And so throughout our portfolio, we own about 2,000 units. And I think we own somewhere about 10 to 13% of the actual units in the communities, not by choice, but just by necessity. Either we acquired the park and it was being run that way already, and we just acquired parks or trailers, or an example of like what I just shared with you, like someone passed away and heir didn't want it, and all of a sudden we've inherited a couple different trailers. Our goal though is to sell them off. Our goal is to renovate them and then turn around and find another homeowner that truly wants to own that home outright and be a part of our community. Like that is our ultimate objective, is to get out from underneath all the day-to-day management of maintaining that unit and just lease them the land, the dirt that their mobile home's on.
Awesome. Well, you almost led me into my next question, which was, you talked about the positive, you painted the great picture. There's obviously a lot of upside to what you're doing. You've painted a little bit of the negative, a little bit of the downside. I want to go back to, what led you to where you were. You said that you kind of survived the crash. Kevin,
I don't know about survive.
So, well, you got through, you're still here.
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm alive, right?
I like to talk about like what I call favorite failures or favorite like speed bumps along the way, right? Do you have any of those type of, failures that you think set you up ultimately for your success and got you to the place that you're at this point? And is there any stories like that you might be able to share with our guests?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, any decision we make right at this moment in time alters the future course of our life, right? Anything historically, if you go back and like change a moment in time, we might not be talking here today, right? And so I'm a firm believer that although 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, all those years were incredibly challenging for me, still looking back, the hardest time of my life, the most difficult days of my life, working through, just lots of foreclosures and judgments and just creditors and, tens of millions of dollars owed and lost my, I know it sounds like a sob story that you hear from all these different gurus out there, but I really did. I lost my personal residence and, it was in foreclosure, and I literally lost all my access to credit, driving a used car that was literally, like 12, 13 years old. And I didn't have the ability to go buy anything. I literally couldn't go like buy a new car. I couldn't even get a car loan. And so, but I tell you that all those hard times, like while you're in the trenches, while you're like, you're in there, your feet are dirty, you're kind of down yourself. You know that there's a silver lining. At least you'd hope that there is. You can never see, at least at that point, the forest through the trees. You can't see what the light in the tunnel looks like. However, you just have to have that faith that it's there. And I obviously, if things would have worked out differently back then I probably would have never been led to mobile home parks. And I think that this has been a game changer in our business. I mean, finding this asset class many years ago, now it's now it's like the next hottest thing, right? Like literally what I've seen transpire over the past year, as far as interest in our asset class. I mean, massive private equity firms diving into our space with billions of dollars. That was not happening, I promise you, even 2 or 3 years ago, let alone 7 years ago. And so I would not have been led to this opportunity if it wasn't for the massive downfall that I had as a result of 2008. So, I mean, that's just like that is by far my largest failure, and it's a big one. But there were some lessons and some habits that came out of it, and a new perspective for life, and just rebuilding myself. And honestly, I had bad credit leading up to I think until 2015. I really didn't have any decent credit back, and so I had to learn to live with no credit. I had to learn to get people to believe in my dream, this dream of buying parks and partnering with us again. And hey, this is the new way. This is a way to kind of rebuild. You want to come along for the ride. And prior to that, it's kind of like today. Like today, it's really easy to make money in real estate. I feel like banks are throwing money around left and right again. There's tons of high net worth individuals out there just looking to place money in different deals, and it's just hot. There's deals going around everywhere, and you got to get in now or else there's not gonna be anything left. So it's kind of easy to make money now. That's kind of how it was leading into 2008. However, it was much more difficult 2012, 13, 14 to get people to trust, especially if it was with someone like myself that had gone through a very challenging time. And so anyway, it made me a better person, a bigger man, and ultimately I think a better leader and business owner. So I'm not sure if that's what you're looking for as far as a big failure, but that's a big one. And it really has shaped who I am today, and has shaped us into the business that we are today.
Now, listen, brother, I appreciate the share. And I think that, that it's so important that that we're vulnerable and we talk about these things, because there's so many people listening, like you said, that, maybe haven't been through those struggles or haven't pushed through those type of things. And, maybe take for granted, and maybe not, but maybe take for granted the ability that sometimes you have to be down there to push through to experience, the feeling of what it really feels like to work to that success, right? To have the gratitude that the reward of pushing past, right? Sometimes you got to be at the bottom to really justify getting back up and taking yourself back up to the top. And I think that this market is making people overly confident and in a lot of ways making them feel successful without truly earning it in by doing the right thing a lot of times, unfortunately.
I tell you one good lesson that I guess practice, whatever you want to call it, that kind of I learned during those very dark days. There's certain days that were good and other days that were kind of like, man, I suck. This is horrible. It's like I'm never going to dig out of this hole that I'm in. I learned to go through a mental exercise of things are really bad today, but let's take it a next step. How much worse could it get? Okay. Can I manage? Can I survive? How much, okay. From that point, how much worse can it get? And keep working backwards to find out in my mind, what is realistic of how bad can this really get? And then how bad is that really in the grand scheme of things? And I think it tends to give you perspective of even at your worst point, no matter how bad that is, if you keep following that exercise back 10 steps, what have you, there's still millions of people, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people in this world that their daily life is way worse than how bad it could ever possibly get for you. And that you still have way more opportunity than, again, the majority of the planet. And so stop bitching, stop moaning, pull your pants back up and get back out there and make something of it and fix, or correct what what's been wrong here for the last couple of years. So it's a great exercise. Whenever I'm feeling down, just kind of mentally go through that and very quickly realize that I'm just internally bitching and moaning, and that I need to get my ish together and start moving on with life.
Dude, 100%. And by the way, you can curse on this podcast.
Okay, fair enough.
I was literally last night. I mean, just a side note. My 7-year-old was in the shower, and she's one of these just stands in the shower and just lets water run for 20 minutes on end. And
That's me. Gotcha.
I was sitting there telling her, like, you got to stop wasting water. And as a kind of relate to that, if you've watched the new Steve Jobs documentary on Netflix, he's trying to solve big world issues, and one of the
Yeah.
issues he's trying to solve is the fact that there's major water issues in Africa, and one of those issues is really trying to deal with human waste. So they basically designed this toilet that will incinerate human waste and actually turn it into clean,
Yeah.
drinkable water, which is just out of control. Like how
Yeah.
you can like
Bill
drink
Gates, you
stuff
mean?
up. I'm sorry, Bill Gates. Not.
Yeah. 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 No, I've watched it. So it's quite
Yeah,
impressive.
unbelievable, right? But if you live in America or anywhere basically in North America and you're listening to this podcast, I mean, you have to count your blessings of the opportunity that we.
Absolutely.
So anyway, the backtrack for a second. Kevin, what's some bad advice that you hear being given out in the industry nowadays? Even in a great market, you hear all kinds of crazy stuff being rattled around. What do you hear that's being viewed right now?
I'm around a lot of syndicators that raise capital. And I'm around a lot of syndicators that are just getting their foot in the door. They don't have any prior track record, and they're out there raising capital, kind of leaning on and there's nothing wrong with it. They're leaning on the experience of maybe another experienced sponsor that they're kind of maybe teaming up with, what have you. But I think that there's a lot of ill advice getting passed around about opportunities that are capital's being raised for. As you had mentioned, there's I don't know if you maybe said the term frothiness, but anyway, there's lots of deals being done today that seem fairly risky, not just to me, but I think to lots of other experts out in the industry. And so I think that as far as bad advice is that kind of what happened in 2006, like buy now because prices are going to continually go up, right? Like if you don't get in today, like this deal is not going to get better than what you see here now. Like, the course of the US is changing. Everyone's turning into renters. I get that there really is a massive shift there. However, that doesn't mean that, like, speaking to like apartments, that there isn't a point in time to where there is an oversupply in certain marketplaces, to where there's some type of major economic event that causes a slide back, or an economic slide back, or some type of recession, right? Something to where maybe growth stalls or rent increases stall, or again, there's an oversupply and now you've got vacant units, you've got concessions that have to be given, to where maybe this pro forma is not really going to model out exactly how we've shown you it's going to do over the next 10 years. So just, I don't know if it's necessarily bad advice, but I see a lot of uneducated investors investing hundreds of thousands of dollars in deals as passive investors that, number one, they don't know anything themselves being a passive investor about the asset class. The person they're giving money to, who might be raising capital for an experienced sponsor, them themselves really don't know much either. And so, like, there's multiple layers of, like, this person really doesn't know, other than theoretically, this business. It sounds well, like their pitch is great, but like the practical experience really isn't there. And I think that where you have to go to look is, the actual sponsors themselves. Are they? And there's nothing wrong with this. I think there's two different types of investors. There are those that got started prior to this Great Recession, that either didn't make it through or made it through, whatever happened. And then those that started after, like, on the uptick, right? If you started buying in 2011 and you continued buying up until today, it's very hard to lose money. No matter what decisions you made. The same held true with investing from like 1999 after the dot-com bubble to 2007, 2008. Like, you literally, I mean, sorry, you could be an idiot and you can make money. And you just want to make sure that you're getting in bed with the right person, that they truly, number one, they've got a track record. Number two, what's plan B if things don't go as laid out on that pro forma? Because things change, man. The capital markets change. If a plan was to refi into a cash out year 3, what happens if in year 3 you can do a refi, but you can't do a cash out, right? Like, how does that look for you as an investor? How does that look for the entire investment itself? What if you can't do a refinance? What if cap rates go up a little bit and your exit was your performance based on a certain exit, and that number's not accurate, right? Are there variables in there, as there have been stress tests done to these deals, that make it somewhat of a safe investment, low risk investment? So I think just lots of that going around. Some are really good operators, and some are just they don't know anything, and they're just out there raising tens of millions of dollars of capital. So I think that's risky.
Yeah, I love that answer. And actually, one of the things that I always point out to my investors, we've raised lots of private money in the single family space as well, and
Mm-hmm.
I always say to my investors is, ask me about Plan B, or let's talk about Plan B, right? We've always had multiple exit strategies. I think it's crazy
Yeah.
when you talk to somebody who's borrowing money and they can't tell you what Plan B is, right? Or they're not
Yeah.
even willing to discuss Plan B, or they don't have Plan B. Like if you're not willing to have an open discussion on there's a risk to this investment, and here's what happens when shit goes wrong, right? Then
Mm-hmm.
that's either not somebody who's seasoned enough to understand what's going on, or is not willing to have that conversation because they just don't know the answer, right? And I think that either way, that's a scary situation to be involved in, and investors should be wary of that thing. So definitely finding somebody that you have the capability to answer those questions for you, right?
Well, if you're going to be a passive investor, if you're someone that maybe have another business and you've just done well for yourself and you're putting money in deals, like you should have a pretty fair understanding of like the underwriting and how to identify potential challenges within that deal. Again, I just see too often investments being made haphazardly, and literally, someone that literally doesn't know anything about real estate, and that's fine to a certain extent. But if you're literally just betting on the horse, but you don't know anything about the trainer, I mean, it's
Yeah.
you basically you're rolling the dice, all right? I mean, so
betting's the word there. I mean, go to the casino if you can
yeah,
afford to waste that money in the casino, then hey, go for it.
yeah, yeah.
Agreed. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No.
Betting
You're
was
right.
such a good
I
word.
think we're on the same. I think we're on the same page.
So, awesome. So, a couple more questions I'm going to throw at you, Kevin. Give us, top 1 to 3 books that maybe you've gifted in the last couple of years, or that you're currently giving out, or that you truly believe that changed you.
Yeah. As far as gifted, I'm trying to think back. I mean, one that was recent that I gifted everyone on our team and a lot of friends and family is The Go-Giver. I can't recall who the author is of that book. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that one or not, but
Yep, I am.
wonderful book. As far as another, I mean, Think and Grow Rich is kind of a classic, right? I mean, I've given, I don't know how many people over the last 20 years. It was given to me as a gift, back when I was 19, and I have reciprocated gift many different times to many different folks along the way. Probably another big one was anything Robert Kiyosaki wise, but Rich Dad Poor Dad. I mean, I think that just the basic fundamentals of investing and getting your money to work for you. I've given that to a lot of family members. I came from a very much a blue collar family. It's all about just get a job, not even get a college education, just get a job out of high school, work, shut up, don't talk back, and just, be happy with what you have for the next 35 or 40 years, whatever you're making. And never really thinking about, liabilities and assets the way that's taught in, the basic fundamentals that are taught in Rich Dad Poor Dad. So I've given that to a lot of different family members because majority of my family is very much the poor dad. So from every different walks of life of my family, which is nothing wrong with that. It's just how we're all raised. But so those are the big 3 books that I've gifted over the years. As far as recent books that I've read that have just been awesome, and I wish I read more than what I do currently. I feel like I go through phases where I'll get into kicks and I'll knock out a bunch of books, whether it be audio books or physical books while I'm traveling on a plane or driving. But and then I go through other times where I literally don't read books for 4 months. So I've got weak points as well, just like everyone does. Sam Zell, I think it's called Bullshit Walks. That's a book that I recently finished up, which is pretty awesome. Another one is Anti-Fragility. I'm actually about halfway through that one. It's a monster of a book, but that one is quite interesting. It's all about, identifying and realizing opportunities and growth during very, very stressful moments in your business. And there's not really there's not a real word for there's not a real anonym to fragility or fragile. And so it's just kind of a made up word, anti-fragility, but that's what it's all about. It's all about identifying what opportunities for growth are happening at your company's most vulnerable point, which is typically when that's the opportunity to where you can realize the most growth. And so how to kind of capitalize on those really hard moments in your business. So it's a great book.
Man, I love that. I was just talking about this last week in my mastermind group. I think sometimes, like when we're pushed to our edge and we're stressed out the most, that's when I find personally, and I think a lot of the people, I see it personally as I watch the guys in my group do this, that's when they have the best breakthroughs, right? It's almost the
Yeah.
same concept, right? It's like the more stress, sometimes it forces you to become your best. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like it's the opposite of what you would expect, or you would think that the stress would break you. I feel like some of us who we kind of seek this kind of thing sometimes, almost it's almost it's crazy, right? Crazy to think that we would go after and kind of seek these uncomfortable moments, but sometimes we get super stressed out and backed into a corner, and that's when the breakthroughs happen, and we start to realize that we can find ourselves at a whole different level that we didn't even know we were capable of.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So I love it. So speaking of that, I mean, what do you do? Who do you turn to, or what do you turn to when you feel like you're overwhelmed and stressed out? I mean, based on
What do I turn to? Yeah, I mean, I got 2 young boys at home and an awesome wife. So, I mean, that's a little bit of, I guess you could say, an escape. I try not to take work home with me, and I try to like have dedicated family time when I leave the office at night. So, and I'm pretty good about truly separating work from family life, unless it's an emergency. So that's a good escape for me. We love traveling, both my wife and I, and as a family. I do a ton of bike. Like one of my hobbies is bike riding, like bicycling, like long distances. So
Okay.
I put together a large charity event every year that's coming up in November, where we take 3 days to cycle to Key West. It's like 280 miles, raise a bunch of money for a couple local charities here. I've done some really long, like multi-day, long distance, 1,000+ mile trips. And so I like, things like that, where when I get on the bike though, I don't listen to podcasts. I don't listen to audiobooks, which you'd think it'd be a perfect time to do that because it's kind of dedicated focus. However, to me, you're not truly releasing when you're still got business on the mind. And so if I truly want to get away from it, and I normally ride at 4:30 in the morning, so it's super early, it's dark. I just literally put some music in, whatever is on my mind that day as far as what's going to get me all jacked up and going, and listen to some music and go ride for 2 or 3 hours. So that to me is an awesome release.
Just zone out. I love it.
That's it, man. Zone out. Just focus on the road ahead of me. Not think about anything else other than the music. A lot of the music I listen to, I'm kind of an old school guy, whether it's like rock or rap, or I listen to everything. But it's typically older music, and so there's always like a kind of a hook or an anchor to a particular song that kind of takes you back to a certain period in your life. So I like that. It's a little bit of reflection moments and jamming out as I'm riding along.
So I love that. It's amazing how music does that too, right?
Yeah,
Brings
absolutely.
you back to that moment. So obviously it's a legacy blueprint podcast, Kevin. So what does the word legacy mean to you?
I think just building something that to you means purposeful, that actually has a positive impact, whatever that might be, on you, but also everyone else around you that you touch on a regular basis. For that fact, even folks that you don't touch, right? But not only that, but something that is truly sustainable. So like whether it's a business or, whatever it might be, a charitable endeavor, whatever you're going to build it with the intent of it being sustainable and it being able to share that positive impact on everyone around it, whether you're there or you're not. Like truly, we could all leave this earth tomorrow, but whatever you've done up until that point, will it live on without you being there? So to me, that's what legacy means.
Awesome, brother. Awesome, man. So, I want to respect your time. We're hitting about 40 minutes right now. I mean, is there anything that we've missed that we didn't cover? Anything you want to get to?
Yeah, I don't know. You tell me. I mean, your listeners a little bit better than I do. So, I mean, is there something that you feel is the utmost important for them to know?
I think we got some good investment stuff. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I mean, I know this is so simple and so elementary, but I mean, just get out there. I don't know if you've got folks that listen in that are just getting started, but I think the important part, another thing I'm seeing a lot of nowadays, you probably get the same thing, being that you're kind of a public figure and you're doing this podcast. You get a lot of folks that are they're trying to get started, trying to get their footing, and they reach out, and they're all about me, you know. And so they say, you know, I'd love to pick your brain. I'd love to take 30 minutes of your time or what have you. And I think you're probably just like me. You love helping people. In fact, it's probably a fault, right? Because you literally have a hard time saying no. At least I do, because I love helping everyone that's looking for a hand, because I wouldn't be where I'm at today if it wasn't for a hand up in the world.
Yep.
But with that, as you folks listen in here, you know, the ones that are saying, yeah, I need to get going, I need to get started, I want to reach out to Joe. Figure out how you can add value to Joe or whoever it might be that you're reaching out to. Don't think about it as a me endeavor. Think about how can you help them, that individual, grow their business, improve their business. Like, what can you bring to the table? Because know that the person you're about to reach out to, they're already doing what you want to do. And so they don't necessarily need you, you know, and I don't mean to be harsh there, but how can you bring value to the equation? And that can come in many different forms. That's for you to figure out. But always be about giving back, not about taking. You know, the receiving will come by default if you find out how to give in abundance to that individual or individuals that you're looking to, you know, associate with. So that's all I got, my friend. That's all I got.
I love it, man. I want to add one more thing to that, because it's funny you bring that up. I actually, there's two things that I do in regards to that exact thing. And one, just to tag along to what you just said, every person on this earth has some sort of value to add to others, right? So a lot of people reach out and they're like, well, I don't know what kind of value I have to add. Everyone has some kind of value. I don't care if you're the best cake maker in the world, or you're great at social media posts, or you're great, like whatever it is, you're a great copywriter. Everyone has value to add. So don't think that because you're not great at, you know, finding mobile home parks for Kevin to buy, that you can't create some kind of value in Kevin's life. I've done two things that have changed the game for me, Kevin, to protect my time, because I am that kind of guy that used to be really, really bad at saying no. But I'm also very, very protective of my time, because, you know, we can make money almost infinitely, and we know that, but we can't create more time, right? So when people reach out to me now, I usually ask them a couple different questions, and one of those things will be, you know, how can I help? And a lot of times they will go on and on and on about what they need, again, not bringing value. And then what I'll say to them is, okay, here are a few things I would do, and go do them, right? Because they always want to pigeonhole you into a meeting. When can I meet you? Where can I meet you? I'll buy you lunch. I'll buy you a dinner. I'll buy you coffee, whatever. You do these things first. And what I find is 95% of those people will never get back to you. You know, thank you, appreciate it. You know, boom, you'll never hear from them again. 5% of people will do exactly what you tell them to do, and they'll get back to you. Okay, I did it. This is what happened. Those are the people that we'll spend time with, because the people that truly care about your time, they care about investing in your thoughts, and they want to know what it is that it takes to earn your time, basically, because they value your opinion. Right. So I think
I'm sure. No, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was going to share with you $1 million idea that I think you might be able to take advantage of, and it will help more people along the way. It's something that we recently started doing. So what I've done is, when I started my podcast five plus years ago, in the very beginning, for the first couple of years, every Friday I'd set aside like 2 or 3 30-minute slots where I'd encourage our listeners to reach out, just so I could get to know the listener base. And, you know, that was my way of giving back, other than just the content I gave. And I actually really enjoyed it. I look forward to it every Friday. I got to meet a lot of people, got to meet a number of investors that have teamed up with us over the years. However, I got to a point where I was just way too busy to be doing it. And it stopped for a couple of years. I just restarted it back up probably about 6 months ago. But what I've required of everyone that reaches out to me, if they want to schedule a 30-minute time period, they have to, number one, agree to do it via video, something that I'm going to record and that I'm going to re-release out there as content to help others. Because most of the questions that folks have as they're getting started, as they're running into brick walls along the way, are the same questions that, you know, millions of others have, right? And so how can we help more people with those one-on-one conversations that we're having? And so that's what I've done. And so I've found that the folks that maybe felt like they weren't going to bring value to the equation, or they weren't going to be mindful of my time, will not come on the camera, will not know that it's getting recorded. Like it'll filter out all those kind of time wasters. And the ones that do come on and that are willing to be vulnerable and get recorded and know that it's going to get shared with the world are the ones that truly will more than likely take action or have put some thought behind that conversation. Like they're coming into it mindful and hopefully with some value for both myself, but also more importantly, the people that are going to be listening to it. So I thought that was a way for us. That's a way for us to internally create more content, help a lot of others, but also still maintain that one-on-one interaction with our listeners, which I really enjoy doing. So
that, my friends, is multiplication right there. If you want to know how to multiply your time, that was it right there. That was a great takeaway, man. I appreciate that. That was awesome. No, I mean, the truth is that's great thought process, and it's also creating value in multiple different ways. And that's what it's all about. That's how true visionaries think and protect their time and create value for multiple people at the same time. So I love that takeaway. I think it's awesome. So. Kevin, I appreciate you, man. And quick question before I let you go.
Yeah.
Get you back on track in that light. Generally, we end our podcast with anybody that leaves us a 5-star review and gives us a comment about this episode when we release it. Would you give them 15 minutes of your time? Schedule
Absolutely.
that video call. All right.
Yep.
Awesome. So there you have it, guys. If you're listening to this show, make sure you leave us a 5-star review. Put it in the comments that you listen to the Kevin Bupp show, and we will pick a random winner sometime the week of the show release, and we will reach out to you guys directly and schedule you a 15-minute coaching call with Kevin directly. Kevin, I appreciate you being on the show, and we will put all of your contact details in the show notes as well, whatever it is that you want to release. Thanks again, Kevin Bupp, for being on the show. Appreciate you, man.
Yeah. Thank you, Joe. It's been a lot of fun.
All right, brother.